Oh goodness.
There it is now. Okay. Okay.
Okay,
We're starting over.
we're good.
Go.
Okay. Welcome to the live episode of the Six Steel City Ring podcast. I'm Ray
Live
Whiting.
YouTubing.
Yoo-hoo!
Yes.
We're
Great.
so
We're good.
professional.
Go, go,
We
go.
finally got it. Okay. Okay. Sorry, YouTube world. We'll clean up this mess. We'll get better. With me, I have Miss Leanne Lohman. I have Bob Quinn. I have Zach Phoenicius. Guys, I know you're doing fine. This is the third time we ask you this question. I know you're doing fine. Again, of course, our previous episodes have been taped, have been recorded. So this is our first episode live, and we're gonna start doing live episodes. So again, we're gonna have some bumps and bruises along the way. We'll clean up our mess and we'll get better at it. Guys, last night, Christmas for the NFL is the NFL draft, and we're gonna get it started right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers drafted Troy Fautanu, if I pronounce it right, out of University of Washington. Now, a couple weeks ago, Leanne, Bob, and myself, we had a mock draft. And I would have never thought that Troy Fautanu was going to be drafted, number one. Well, the first pick for the Steelers. Guys, please share your thoughts on this pick right here. And what does that mean for the Steelers going forward this season? Now, Leanne, I know typically I say ladies first. I understand. I do that. But this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it to the rookie, Zach. Zach, share your thoughts. Go.
Okay, well, the first round pick for the Steelers in 2024 proves why I should be nowhere near front office in the NFL, because I was on the Steeler Nation live stream yesterday for all of day one with Stryker, and as we saw no defensive players being taken, my thought was, we're going to get a cornerback. We're going to get a Terrion Arnold. We're going to get a Cooper DeJean. And as it fell to us, they were all right there. It didn't affect the Steelers' plan one bit. They weren't phased. They weren't flustered by the strangeness of the first half of the draft. They knew they wanted to bulk up their line, and they did it, because I would have had Terrion Arnold's name in so fast I would have tripped over one of the tables on the way to the podium. To me, that was the only thing on my mind. But the more we get away from from day one and we can look at it and process, this is a excellent pick for the Steelers. It might not be sexy. It might not be the one that, everyone's going to post, but it is the one that in 5 years, when Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are running free behind our big line, we're going to be happy they made this investment. So very happy, not just for what it means now, but what if it means for the future of Pittsburgh, and that I'm not in the front office.
I keep telling people sexy plays can't happen if you don't have the trenches bulked up. Do you know what I mean? So you get no sexy plays without good trenches. And that's why people should be happy for this draft pick. I love it. I also, though, did not see it coming, but mostly because I never thought he would be there when we picked at 20. Like, not in a million years. He was ranked as like the third highest tackle in the draft. He was supposed to be long gone. And so, fate worked in our favor this time, and we managed to get him. I think his versatility brings a lot of benefits to the team. I like that he protected a left-handed quarterback, because I think that gives him some additional flexibility. Instead of, if he had just been on the left side of a right-handed quarterback on their blind side, he actually protected the other side. And I just think that gives him a little bit more flexibility to be able to move. It's not an easy swap transition to the other side in Pittsburgh, but it changes the footwork, it changes the body positioning and all of those things, but it does have a little bit different meaning to it. And I think that that'll help them out, as well as they try to determine who's going to be on the left side and who's going to be on the right side between him and Broderick Jones. And then, of course, in the meantime, we have Dan Moore, who I would imagine will start the season unless he loses.
Yeah, I don't see Dan Moore beating out either Fatanu, and I hope I
He
said that right.
supposedly did last year.
I don't think he will, because I think at this point the Steelers have to have accepted that Dan Moore is not the answer. Everything during the lead up to the draft indicated it was going to be a right tackle and they were going to move Broderick back to the left side. It seemed like a done deal.
They
The
flat said it.
acquisition of the acquisition of Fatano and the emphatic Mike Tomlin, at press conference last night saying that he's a tackle. It's got to be days are numbered. I listened to Dulac, kind of go on and on about Dan Moore before
too.
the draft, and he's a starting tackle, and he's been a starting tackle. Yeah, he's been the worst starting tackle.
He
in
said
the
he's going to
NFL.
get paid big money next year, is what Dulac said.
I certainly hope so, because if that's the
wish him
case,
well.
maybe Omar can trade him tonight.
Excellent.
Yeah, and get rid of him. I mean, if he is somehow climbing value in Jerry Dulac land, and that translates to any NFL GM,
Right.
talking to you, Chicago, then trade him for a second, a third. I never thought he'd spin gold and get anything for Kendrick Green, but he did.
Yeah.
It turns out that, maybe trading Kevin Dotson was kind of a mistake, although they were moving on from him, but how he played in Los Angeles during that huge contract, it's amazing. I want to echo Zach too. Last night, did I love the pick? Initially, no, not when I heard it. Then wrote a couple articles, watched a whole bunch more tape, and yeah, I'm coming around. I mean, it's hard not to love a guy who truly wants to be a Steeler, but I think, passing on Terry and Arnold and or even Quinion Mitchell, who went 2 picks later to the Eagles, I don't think they could have traded down and still got Fatanu. So I will say that. I mean, for some reason, all the corners slid, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, Fatano, he's a violent player, and nasty streak. Reminded me more and more of Broderick Jones, a little smaller than Jones, but not undersized for a tackle. I thought Tomlin made a great point today when he said, okay,
Yeah.
fine, he's a half inch shorter than he should be. That's
Big
not
long
enough.
arms.
Yeah, he's got the long arms. And look at last year. We were all, in the round we got him, everybody was happy with Nick Herbig. We had no idea
Right.
how good he was going to be. But it was the same knock. He's too small to be an edge rusher. And Tomlin emphatically last year said, no, he's an edge rusher. So, if Fatanu, all the F guys, and now I can forget the other two now. But if Fatanu is, the first round version of Herbig, a little bit undersized, but plays, and his tape, let's face it, he was the leader of that line that won the Joe Moore Award for the best offense or best offensive line in college football. So I like that he's a leader. Broderick was already starting to assume a leadership role last year. I think an offense is a lot better if you've got leaders on the offensive line who, and let's face it, Russell Wilson, the knock on him is he's not the best leader. But if he's got a couple of young linemen, even if it makes him kind of look, phony and all that to the rest of the team, you got a couple of offensive linemen who can lead. If Wilson washes out, then they're going to be just fine. Kind of like they were with, way back when Faneca was the leader and when Ben took over.
I loved hearing Mike Tomlin say last night too that they watched the film on him and defenses changed what they did based off of him being on the field. Like, that was huge. You hardly ever hear that about an offensive lineman. You might think they changed stuff because of the collective package of this group, protecting the quarterback, but not to hear that they changed things based off of one tackle like that.
Yeah,
That's true.
You mentioned about the offensive lineman, how drafting Troy is a good upgrade. We have Nate Herbig waiting in the wings. We have Broderick Jones.
Nick, not Nate.
Right.
I'm sorry.
We have both, but only one on the offense.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. Okay.
I don't think Nate's waiting in the wings. He might be eating in them, but he ain't waiting in them.
Herbig. There we go. Herbig on the offensive side. How much did we give credit to Andy Weidel on this? Because keep in mind, think about this. before Andy Weidel and Mike Munchak, there was a big gap in the offensive line play. I mean, there were so many missing assignments. I mean, it was just missing blocks. I mean, the quarterback was unprotected quite a lot. We saw the season when it got to the point where Duck Hodges had to come into play. Mason Rudolph came into play. So it was a big gap in between those 2 years. How much do we credit Andy Weidel for right now?
I think you're
I
crediting
think
him a great deal. And whenever he came in, he brought that tough, gritty desire to run the ball, because we've been hearing every single season, Steelers want to run the ball. Steelers want to run the ball. Andy Weidel was the first one to come in and with Con Tomlin say, we are going to make this happen. We're not going to say it. We're going to bring in the people. We're going to make the non-sexy picks. We're going to sign the big Samuelos, and we're going to run this football. Because Ray, we were talking before about how we go conservative at the end of games. And I want to get back to the point where it's not conservative. When Bill Cowher used Jerome Bettis to close down games, no one was like, oh, that's too conservative. When you have a great running line and a running back, it's not conservative. You're shutting teams down at the end of games. So that's what I think we're getting back to. So Weidel gets a ton of credit for this pick, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Yeah, and Weidel might be the best offensive line talent evaluator in the NFL. He's not bad on the defensive line either. I mean, but he seems to specialize in the trenches. We'll Steelers are going to need skill positions, so we'll see how he does there. But Weidel, he drafted Broderick Jones. He drafts the Fatano, and it's first offensive lineman in the first round since DeCastro, and first time ever that the Steelers have gone back-to-back in offensive linemen in the draft. So that's got his influence written all over it. Kevin Colbert, we don't think would have ever done that. Maybe based on the current needs of the team. As far as the offensive line goes, I mean, really since Pouncey retired and kind of that whole group left at the same time, and we've talked about this before, and DeCastro getting hurt, that really damaged the offensive line, and Colbert just didn't do a good job in replacing it. He went for versatile guys like Kendrick Green, Dan Moore, and guys kind of in the middle rounds of the draft, and stuck those guys in front of Ben for the last year. And it flopped. They couldn't run the ball. They barely protected Ben. They had to throw short passes. It didn't work. It didn't work with Kenny and Mitch Trubisky, although now you look back and say, well, was it Kenny and Mitch Trubisky or the line? Well, the reality is it was both. So now you're building a mean, tough group of tackles that you got now. You got your bookend tackles. Sayamalu didn't get a lot of publicity, but he played very well. He was a top 10 guard last year in the NFL. James Daniels probably going to be gone after this year, but I mean, if Daniels is your worst offensive line and you go get tonight one of those starting centers, you could have I heard Kaboli kind of talking about this. You could have a really, really strong offensive line for the next 10 years in Pittsburgh.
To go back to Weidel for a second, to me, he's a little bit of like the missing piece when he joined the staff. So I know, you never know exactly everything that's going on behind the scenes. We have to kind of speculate off of the little bits we hear and what we see happening. And to me, I think you're right. We were always very focused on skill players. I think we tried to focus on versatile players, but often too late in the draft for them to have a big enough impact. And to me, this shoring up of the trenches that we've needed so badly now for the past several years finally happened when Andy Weidel joined the team. And so that makes me feel like we know he did that in Philly. And that makes me feel like he was like our missing piece. Like we had talent to evaluate skill players. We had talent to evaluate some of these other things and did well with those picks. But this is where we missed out. So having somebody who does as well as he does evaluating the trenches is incredible.
It's true. And Ray, really quick, Ray,
I was going to ask you a question.
The credit that's going to go to Weidel, it's not just the credit for the pick now. If we think about 2023, there was a lot of frustration and a lot of times where we simply didn't measure up to the teams playing against us. But everyone knows there was so many games where an inch this way or an inch that way or one less bad offensive play would have been a win and would have changed the entire course of the season. So he's going to get credit at the end of 2024 when we look back and we see how many more wins these little tweaks and upgrades and changes in our strategy are going to impact. Go for it, Bob.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was going to ask you guys a question. Do you guys think that when Art was doing this, and I'll give Kevin Colbert some credit because he had a hand in the search for the new general manager, and Omar worked under him. Do you think maybe Kevin Colbert and Art Rooney identified that Omar is a really good salary cap guy, really good on the business side, not selling him short on, because he's been very aggressive with trades. But did they maybe think, hey, let's go get a first class talent evaluator like Weidel and put Omar and Andy together as the perfect general manager? And the question is, can they keep that together? Because let's face it, I mean, as a duo, this is pretty phenomenal stuff for the first year and a half.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's exactly what happened. I think that they loved Omar and what he brought to the table. You don't want to lose him. You want to respect all the years he put into the organization, biding his time and waiting his turn and whatever else, moving his way up. And I think you want to respect that, but that, he needed a little support in this area. And so to me, that makes perfect sense to go look at the league and say, well, who does this well? Who was doing this really well for their team? And you find a guy like Andy Weidel, and it's like a perfect marriage.
It really is. I think of Kansas City, we just look, they didn't just renew one guy, they renewed their trio at once. They're like, we know what it takes to keep this in place.
Yes.
And I think that's what we're going to see if we really want to be what we were before. One of those every single year Super Bowl contending, beginning of the season, what our expectations are, because we're not there right now. We have missed that. We've tripped a lot. We want to get back there. That's where it starts. And I love all the non-sexy talk we're talking, because Leanne, what you said is great. We're not going to have those big sexy things unless we get it right now. And this is what we didn't do at the end of the Ben era. This is what we didn't do when we were evaluating Kenny Pickett. This is what we need, and we're going to love this for the next 5 years. So, Bob, they should keep it together and look to the Chiefs if they need to any example.
Absolutely. Hey, Ray, we have our first user question. It's from the live chat from the Honey Project.
Oh.
All right, this is from the Honey Project. How
Yeah.
many more games will we win season? Let me scroll up, sorry. How many more games will we win this season with these upgrades? Zach, what do you think?
I think at least 2 games, at minimum. We've upgraded 2 games. I would like to say we're in the 2 to 4 range, but I think that's getting a little greedy. At least a 2-game swing on the positive end, just for what we've seen here. We don't even know what else we're going to have, but just from that.
Yeah. I'm so optimistic. I'm such a homer and all of that. I'm going to say 3 and split them, right there in the middle of what Zach said. But I think what we're also going to see is some more decisive wins than some of those like barely won games we had. I think that we will decisively beat some of those teams that we should have decisively beat before.
Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. With 10-7, last year, I think 12-5 is realistic. Probably 11-6, but 12-5. It really depends, honestly, on who the number 2 wide receiver is going to be, who the cornerback is going to be, and who the center is going to be. If Nate Herbig is snapping the ball, Russell Wilson and is probably, between him and Justin Fields, good for another win based on how bad the quarterback play was last year. Although, could Russell or Justin Fields end up not being as productive as Mason was in the last 3 games? It's possible. Hopefully not. If it is, I think then, the moves went bust. But even if they do, it's just a new day in Pittsburgh. There's reason to be optimistic, because even if it fails, Omar's going to do something to try to fix it. We're not just going to sit there for 5 years and go give it time.
I
Which-
think I said this last show that I'm so grateful we're trying something. Do you know what I mean? I can't even get mad about the result because if I had to do another year of like, let's wait for Kenny Pickett to develop, do you know what I mean? Gonna jump off the skyscraper or something. I mean, it was crazy. And I wasn't even like a Kenny Pickett hater, but you know, how many times can you keep watching the same thing happen over and over again before you try something? Is why I was so glad to see Mason Rudolph come in. At the beginning, I didn't think he'd do anything, but I thought, well, at least we're trying something.
No, that's true. And I have a question because I was called the rookie and I love that because for people who've been I started watching the Steelers in 1994. That's the first game I truly remember. But for some reason, I cannot remember a single season where the Steelers beat who they were supposed to beat. I always remember the Steelers at some point playing down to an opponent and not being that, like if the Chiefs play the Bears, the Chiefs are going to beat the Bears. We know I remember Raiders games, just awful Raiders games where we were just destroyed. And the Bears game, the Detroit game from a few. When was the last time that you, or any that you guys remember who've been watching the Steelers longer than me? Is that always been a Steeler thing? And is that new day include us being able to finally beat the teams we're supposed to, where we can just circle certain weeks and go, oh well, that's a win.
But I don't know if it's a Steeler thing, but I definitely get what you're saying. That the Tomlin game that is so talked about now. I mean, it's 6 years in a row. We've lost 3 games in a row during a season. But yeah, going all the way back to the 70s, there were occasionally times that, Chuck Noll's teams would drop a game to Cleveland or Cincinnati when they probably shouldn't have. Although Cincinnati, as much as we make fun of them, has had some pretty decent teams during the Super Bowl era. They haven't won the Super Bowl, but they've occasionally popped up. I remember, it's hard to say it was, like the Houston Oilers game before the 34-5 AFC Championship game on Monday night, where they just got torn apart in Houston. It's hard to really call that a letdown because Houston was a very good team, but yeah, did it happen under Noel? Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up 1994, Zach, because it happened under Cowher too. It wasn't as prevalent. They didn't call it a Cowher game. They didn't call it an Noel game. I think with Tomlin, it was consistently a flat performance against a team that wasn't really that great. Whereas Nolan Cowher, it was, yeah, we think we should win, but okay, yeah, you can just tell today ain't our day. And if it wasn't for the 3-game losing streaks, I don't think there'd be such a thing as a Tomlin game. And that's only been a recent phenomenon. But yeah, going on 6 years, losing 3 games in a row every year, that's a real problem to me.
I was going to say I'm kind of in the middle, age wise and what I remember. But I remember for most of my life thinking the Steelers are going to get off to a slow start this season. And if they do, they will be more successful than if they come out hot, because it felt like that was a trend for a while. And then feeling like we were pretty likely to drop the ball on some game we were supposed to win. We go in and play the Patriots so tough. And, there's usually Tom Brady when they just dominated us. But, there were times, plenty of them, where we came out on top in that game. You know what I mean? But then we would turn around and lose to somebody ridiculous like the Cardinals or somebody, the old Jaguars or the Panthers or something. Like, come on, man.
But
It doesn't make any sense. I always just figure that maybe we get like a little, maybe like all teams. I don't know that it's unique to Pittsburgh. It's just our experience. We get a little too cocky, a little too arrogant. You do play some game against a team like the Patriots or somebody, Kansas City now, or somebody really well. And so then you underestimate what's coming next for you.
I believe when we talk about Tomlin games, they come late in the season. It's one of those games where, again, the season is on the line. Just like year before last, the Raider game in Pittsburgh, when Kenny Pickett threw the late touchdown to George Pickens in the end zone. To me, that was a Tomlin game. Another one was when Kenny Pickett, he rolled out, to the flats. He lobbed it to Najee Harris. He ran it for a touchdown. That drive.
Ravens game. That was a great
Ravens game. That's a Tomlin game right there.
Yeah, but Ray, those are wins.
Yeah,
those are wins. Yeah, but those are Tomlin games because when it when it comes close to the
But-
regular season, the end of the
But
season,
they don't call those wins Tomlin games. They call the unexplained losses
Loss.
Tomlin games.
I believe if there's a game, depending on where they're at in the season, and as far as the playoff chase, if they're on the outside looking in, then games from henceforth, those are Tomlin games to me, in my opinion.
Well, outside looking in, I mean, I just for those who are watching this, the Tomlinson coached one game in his career that the Steelers were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Now that was a Ben stat, but let's face it, it's 2 years removed from Ben, and it's becoming a Tomlin stat. So it'll be interesting to see now with an upgrade in quarterback. Neither one of these guys are Ben Roethlisberger. Folks, don't expect it. But Justin Fields and Russell Wilson bring different things to the table, and they are good NFL quarterbacks. It'll be interesting to see if that streak continues. It's kind of like I wrote this about a month ago that, everybody predicts the Steelers are going to finish last in the AFC North 2 years in a row. Well, you know what, Vegas, if you keep predicting it, yes, eventually it will happen. It happened in 1988. At some point in the future, it'll happen again. But just because you predict it every year doesn't mean it's going to happen this year. So, Tomlin, do you give him credit? I give him a lot more credit for the never being eliminated from the playoffs, except for one game, than I do for winning seasons. We haven't won a playoff game in 7 years. So until we break that streak, he's going to continue to catch grief. As far as any other grief besides that, I don't give him a lot of. I only give him, a lot of static for some of the
We've read
losses
your
and
work.
crazy decisions. Yeah.
We've read your articles, Bob. All right, so since we're all doing questions, I want to ask one. So yesterday I read and did an article on Jerry Bullock saying that he believes the Steelers fully intend to keep both of these quarterbacks on the roster in 2025 unless somebody absolutely tanks. He thinks that they will try to work out a deal with Justin Fields prior to this season even beginning. They'll obviously wait until the season ends and try to work something out with Russell Wilson. How likely do you guys think it is that we actually keep both of these guys? I mean, is that just, I don't know why Dulac would blow pipe smoke, but.
I don't know if it's as much as a, but go for it. You start out, but.
No, go ahead, Zach.
Oh, I don't think it's as much of a pipe dream, but I think it's less about what the Steelers want to do and more about what the quarterbacks are going to be willing to take. I think me and Ray were talking about it in the green room before. I love Justin Fields' attitude when he came into the Steelers. Yeah. He seemed to be willing to accept his role. Russell Wilson's the starter. I can compete for it and all that. So I feel more optimistic about him being willing to take a long-term deal that's maybe more team-friendly. It's Russell Wilson that I'm worried about, because if the Steelers have a good season, win a playoff game with Russell Wilson, does he suddenly become the guy that wants the $100 million again? Yes. Or does he become the guy that's, now I have another team around me again, I better not mess it up this time? And I don't know what Russell Wilson we're going to get. So I would say I can see Justin Fields in 2025 and beyond more than I can see Russell Wilson, simply based on the fact that success is going to keep Wilson here, and that success could also be what drives the price up.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on, let's face it, let's look at another team in the NFL that brought in an old quarterback who, unlike Russell Wilson, is coming off an injury, not necessarily, a benching. The Atlanta Falcons, they used, hey, let's bring Michael Penix. If you didn't watch the press conference today, folks, you should watch it, because this is some pretzel twisting reasoning they
Somebody
brought out
said,
there.
Peter Schrager said this morning, this is cheating on your wife when you're on the honeymoon. He said that.
I mean, it's, granted that Cousins, the first time he goes out to meet the press as a Falcon, admits to tampering violations. I mean, I don't know what the Atlanta Falcons are doing, folks, but
they don't
translating that to the Steelers for a minute. Russell Wilson is 35. Let's say he has a resurgent season, which we all hope he does. And let's say he decides that, okay, yeah, I do want to come back and play for Pittsburgh for another year or two. So he's 36. then it's okay. Can Justin Fields be the realistic transition plan? I think at this point, what you have to convince Wilson and Fields to do is look, we can afford to pay 40 or $50 million for our quarterbacks, but we can't afford to pay both of you that kind of
Right.
money. So if you're willing to split the money, and Russell, maybe you take 30, and Justin, you take 10, maybe 12, 15 for 2 years while you sit and wait. And I think, unlike Jordan Love, who was just, the guy's just a phenomenal straight drop back passer. He's not a runner. He's a really talented, good quarterback. Green Bay has the secret sauce. I don't know how they're doing it, but Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love. I mean, sit for 3 or 4 years and become one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So if Justin Fields will go along with that, but I do think the Steelers will make packages for him where he can still get on the field and play, then I think we have something. So would I love to see them combine and do that? Yes. But if Russell Wilson has a good year, let's say we go crazy, we go all the way to the Super Bowl, there's no way he's signing a $35 million deal. And then it becomes a question of, do we let 25-year-old Justin Fields walk out the door
One more year with
and
Wilson.
put all our
2
money
more
on
years.
Wilson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Wilson is already doing the PR work in the city with all of the stuff he's doing, going to Penguins games and at the hospital. And look, I am not hating on it. Like, I love it. I appreciate that he's getting involved. I appreciate that he's doing good deeds. Do you know what I mean? I think that that's what professional athletes should do. So I very much love and appreciate that he's out there showing his face around the city and making Pittsburgh his home. But I do also think this is part of the campaign to show everybody that, like, hey, I'm not an arrogant prima donna like everybody thinks I am. Do you know what I mean? Look, I can go slum it up at the Penguins game and bring in bad luck and have them lose, but
But Leanne, you know what? Here's my thought. I feel that Russell had to do this, given the fact of how he came to Denver.
100%.
So now, I mean, it's like, now you're not eating, he's not eating a slice of humble pie. He's eating a whole pie.
Yeah.
So, but now I'm kind of circling back here to the draft pick here. We have Troy Fautanu that's protecting Russell Wilson. At the same time, Broderick Jones, Siamalu, Herbig, offensive Herbig. So we have that good nucleus, that good offensive line right there. And I know right now as a whole, the league is a passers league. I believe that what we're doing, what Pittsburgh is doing, given the fact that Andy Weidl is showing the blueprint, I believe the running game will come back.
Agreed.
Well, I don't think it ever left. I just think it'll be much more effective with the guys that they have.
That's accurate.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see if Najee, instead of getting hit in the backfield or at the line, and this is what I loved about Broderick so much last year when they ran to his side. It always seemed like on the run that Broderick was a yard or two down the field with his man, so that Najee wasn't getting hit if he was going to Broderick's side until a yard or two past the line of scrimmage. And I think a guy like him, who's so big, that if he's not getting hit till 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, that's a 6-yard gain every time. And if we're chunking it down the field 5-6 yards with Najee, and then Jalen comes in, and now you run that little toss that they like to run, which I think will be a lot more effective this year, running it to either Broderick. I mean, it infuriated me they ran that play to Dan Moore's side all the time because it was guaranteed to go nowhere. You got Darnell Washington, you got Broderick Jones, you got George Pickens. Line them all up on the same side and run that toss play and watch what happens. So I'm really excited to see what happens with Najee this year, and I think Jalen is going to benefit as well. It's just going to be a matter of, I think we'll pick up Najee's option. Is he going to play for it? That to me is the big question.
And let me add to that. fine. I mean, if you're gonna, I mean, if Alonzo will plow the road and you get 5, 6, 7 yards of carry, great. But I hope that Tomlin doesn't have that mentality of like past Willie Parker, run until the wheels fall off. Now you're down
I
to
think
one
he's-
running back.
Well, I think he's past the
Yeah.
the 3 down running back. I think he understands how good that tandem is. He has to. I
He
would think
has
so. What do
to.
you think?
He's no dummy. He has to.
Look, I hate to play devil's advocate, but stranger things have happened in Pittsburgh. I'm just saying.
Well, I think the knock on Arthur Smith too last year with Atlanta, even though it's not true, if you look up the stats, it's really not true. I mean, he had a great tandem with Bijan Robinson
Yeah.
and Algier. So I think Arthur Smith knows how to use a tandem. I'm not worried about
I think
him
that's why
blowing it.
people always say that he didn't use Bijan well, because he was using it as a tandem. So you expect to see this kid's numbers be all of these numbers, but kind of like in Pittsburgh, they were split a little bit more among the two of them. Do you know what I mean? So I do think that people said that about him. I don't think that was, I agree, that wasn't quite a fair ding against his play calling abilities.
That's true. I want to come back really quick to the Russell Wilson thing because I have another perspective on the leadership thing that it very, very could well be that this is Russell Wilson's redemption tour. He wants to make up for Denver, but I see it a little differently because there is no coach in the NFL that's more rah-rah college than Pete Carroll was. And that's how Pete Carroll was in college, and that's how Russell Wilson was in college. So Russell Wilson, a rah-rah guy, comes to the NFL as a rookie, and he has a rah-rah coach. And they have success in that kind of a system. A system doesn't work anywhere else in the NFL, but in that microcosm worked. And he gets to Pittsburgh and he's like, okay, I have the great defense. I have the offensive line. I have the coach. I have everything that I had in Seattle. What if we have that too? And so I'm wondering if this is his way of bringing that part of the winning culture in Seattle back here. And from what I'm seeing, I'm excited about seeing that part of him come back. And I don't see it as hokey. I see it as right now, what weirdly enough, it's exactly what the Steelers need.
I love that perspective. And I have to say that I hope it didn't come across like I was bashing what Russell Wilson is doing at all or implying it's fake, because I definitely don't feel that way. Well, what I feel like is that he's doing all the things he needs to do to show Pittsburgh that he can be successful. And somebody wise clued him in and said, look, man, maybe Cam Hayward told him on the phone, like, look, Steelers fans love it when you're genuine and you're invested and you're visible and all these things. And so if he took that advice, even whether it was what he was planning to do or not, and put it to use, I think he's using every tool available to him to make this time in Pittsburgh as successful as possible. And I think when you only have a 1-year contract, you got to start that like right away. You can't wait until November to start going to Children's Hospital or whatever it is you're going to do. And so I think he's smart. I think he's taken advantage of every situation early as he can. I think it's genuine. I think he's a good guy. I appreciate all the things he's doing. I don't mean that any kind of a knock. I just think that this is part of the big package for him to show on and off the field that he is invested in this city and he wants to be here. He mistakenly thinks the fans have some influence on what the team will do next year.
Oh yeah, no knock whatsoever. I was speaking to all the other people who had a much more negative view on it. Like,
I don't want to say people are listening. I don't want them to think that I mean something bad, not necessarily you, but.
So here's my final question. Who does the Steelers pick up in rounds 2 and 3 tonight?
What? I think there's an excellent chance that Leanne from the mock draft is going to nail this. I have a sneaking suspicion, as long as Buffalo does not take a center at 33, then I think Green Bay gets their pick, and I would assume that's going to be JPJ when they pick it. And that means Zach Frazier could fall all the way to us at 51. So kudos to Leanne for, potentially getting that right. Do I think we should trade up if Buffalo takes a center? Yeah, we got to get in front of Green Bay. If we want Zach Frazier. Now, that being said, those of you who've watched, you know that I think receiver, cornerback, best one available.
Right.
And we go get Cedric Van Peren at pick number 84.
And maybe the Steelers have that like in their head, like, oh, this is our one path, and then if they take a center, then this is our alternate path, and we like Van Pran just as well. I mean, I think that's possible. I never thought he would even be a possibility until we for sure didn't take a center with that first round yesterday, and that said to me that they must feel confident in more than one center on the board.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with what Bob said. I go back to my mock drafts, and I've done a countless mock drafts on my own, and every single time there was a center somewhere for me. If it wasn't the first, it was the second. Wasn't the second, was the somewhere I would find a center. So the Steelers, I think, are fine at center, and they will eventually get one. I'm hoping for a wide receiver somewhere in the second, whether it's that trade that we thought was going to happen for Ayuk, or whether it was one of the other big wide receivers that, Adonai Mitchell, I think, is still on the board from Texas. If there's no run at receivers, I don't think they're going to lose their patience at center. I think eventually we'll get one and we'll be very happy with the one we get. So I will be happy as long as we don't reach for that.
Yeah,
All right.
I think Brian Batko made a great point on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette draft show last night that the Steelers might, as far as center goes, they might not think it's a three-man race at center. They might think it's a 7-man race at center.
Right.
So
That's a really good point.
It is a very good point. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, Graham Barton kind of came out of nowhere and then wound up being the first guy to go off the board. You know what I mean? They were talking about JPJ going like in the top 5 at one point. You know what I mean? And then now he's gone fallen. All of them. When I wrote an article like a month ago, there was multiple people saying that this was going to be the first draft ever where we have 3 centers go in the first round. We didn't even come close.
Yeah.
I wonder if JPJ's concussion is the reason that happened, because everybody was so high on him after the Senior Bowl. Cedric Van Pran, I've loved him since the end of the season. I thought when the season ended, he was the best center in the country. Then JPJ goes out and looks awesome at the Senior Bowl. And, Zach Frazier, everybody kind of watches the tape and recognizes the wrestling background. Then Graham
And he's
Barton,
local. He's getting
Yeah.
the Kenny Pickett benefit of being a local
the Graham
guy.
Barton generational player.
Yeah.
To me, it was nonsense. I don't believe that for a second.
I didn't see that in Barton.
Yeah, I don't get it. Not with him. But that being said, Matt Piernick, who was on our mock draft podcast, he was pretty high on Tanner Bortolini, and Bo Limmer is another guy, and Nugent out of Michigan. The Steelers broke some streaks when they took Fatanu. But one of the streaks that's been around for a while now is that the general manager and the coach go to the pro day. You get somebody from that, usually in the first round. So even if they broke it in the first round, Roman Wilson, who Ray and I like in the second round, and who was in our mock, is a possibility. You start looking at, who's left from Georgia, Alabama. Kool-Aid McKinstry, who was Leanne's first round pick. Do we trade up to go get him? I'd rather trade up to get Kool-Aid than I would to get a center.
Agreed. I agree with that.
Oh yeah, the only trade I can see us doing is using one of the thirds to trade up back into the second if we get that center we want, and then trade back up and get a cornerback. I would love a great cornerback
Green
center.
Bay. I can see to get above Green Bay. I think that makes sense, but I don't want to trade way up into the beginning of the second round to grab a center.
No. If we trade up there, it's going to be. It could be for that guy that all of us are like, oh, I didn't think of that. And we research it. We're like, oh, that's why I didn't think of it. He's amazing. So the front office knows what they're doing. And the further away I stay from it, the better pick we're going to get, apparently.
Yeah, I think you're right. You brought up Adonai Mitchell. I'm trying to throw Matt under the bus here. He's not a fan. The skill he loves, but he thinks he's the head case, and you put him and Pickens in the same room, it's going to explode. That being said, hey, talent's talent. This is the NFL. If the kid's a head case because he wants the ball and he's going to pout when he doesn't get it.
Mhm.
Give me a whole team full of receivers that are going to pout if they don't get the ball.
You'd rather say
You
whoa
know,
than
as long as
sick
they
'em.
don't quit on the play.
Whoa, then sick 'em.
Yeah.
Great, that great Tomlinism, Leanne. I liked it.
Well, guys, I tell you what, this is good talk here. Good talk, good reaction to the first pick. Again, it is in present time right now, 6:23. The NFL draft picks back up rounds 2 and 3 at 7 p.m., which is a little over a half hour from now. So we're gonna get ready for that. And we will come back later, maybe tomorrow. We'll come back later with our reaction to rounds 2 and 3.
Yep.
Okay.
Guys,
And we'll
thank
post
you.
on X. We'll post on X well in advance when we're going
Yeah,
live, so
what we're
you guys
doing.
can join us.
Yes, yes. And again, I do apologize for the live production. That's on me. It'll get better.
It's on all of us,
It's
Ray.
all good. It happens. It's not on anybody.
We're old people operating technology. Bear with
Except for
us.
the rookie. Except for the
And if you have
rookie.
any questions or anything, please email us at 6steelcityrings@yahoo.com. That's SIXSteelCityrings@yahoo.com. Now, Zach, you're a rookie. This is what you have to learn. You ready for this?
I am.
Bob, what should you do?
Like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you'll know when we go live. We'll be going live now that we know how to do it. We'll be going live a lot more often.
Leanne?
Please like, share, and subscribe. It helps the algorithm on YouTube so we get seen by more Steelers fans. We appreciate it.
Exactly.
Zach?
Like, share, subscribe, and post on every single platform you have. Get us on TikTok. It'll be fun.
Right.
All right. Guys,
Thank you, guys.
have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Take care. We'll come back soon, okay?